Hello, and welcome to Real Menopause Talk. My guest today is Dominique Cocuzza. Dominique is a mom of 2 boys, a fellow weightlifter, and lives in Charlottesville, Virginia. I had heard about her community of women training, eating, and cooking together online to live strong, healthy, symptom-free lives, and I simply had to meet her to find out more. Here is what she had to say when we met up. Dominique, lovely to meet you. Would you like to tell everybody a little bit about yourself, where you are in the States, your work, family, background?
Sure. Well, my name's Dominique Cocuzza, and I live in Charlottesville, Virginia, which is in the east coast of the U.S. I'm from up north, New Jersey, New York City, but I've been living here for about 13 years. A boy mom of 2, 10 and 12-year-old boys. Very active. And I had my children later in life. I've had 3, this is my 3rd career. So my first career was actually in academia, and I was an art conservator for 17 years in New York City, working with non-Western, well, so-called non-Western, non-European art from Indigenous people. And when I had my children, I changed my career to become a Waldorf teacher so that I could be a stay-at-school mom. And in my 40s, started lifting. And that's really when I pivoted my whole career towards fitness full time. And I now serve women in perimenopause and beyond.
What took you to Virginia?
I actually ended up getting married to my first love from when I was 17, who had relocated to Virginia and had, a child and gotten married and divorced. And so I relocated down here to marry him, and we had kids pretty quickly. We're not married anymore. We have a good co-parenting relationship now. Once I moved down here, I decided I wasn't going back north because I love it here.
I have had a little bit of a look at your website and was just so excited by everything. There's so much information that is interesting and exciting there. One of the little bits that I immediately hooked onto was your mention of your Perislam. Can you tell us all about your Perislam?
Sure. Well, I just turned 50 last Sunday, not this Sunday, the Sunday before, February 6th.
Happy birthday.
And, thank you. I was really excited for this birthday. It feels like a big milestone for me being half a century old. In terms of my menopause journey, I am still in my fertile years. Well, my gynecologist feels like I'm in the middle of perimenopause based on what's going on with me. I'm still menstruating, and I know I'm going to make it to at least 51 before I hit menopause. And a lot of what I do with myself and also with my clients is to prolong our fertility so that we have better long-term health outcomes. And the way that we do that is by the lifestyle habits and choices that we make. So in terms of my Perislam, I would say that my Perislam happened about 2 years ago when I was, maybe between 47 and 48, I would say. I just started feeling out of control. I was having little symptoms like a little bit of weight gain, but, I kind of chalked that up to the pandemic. And I also chalked a lot of my anxiety and stress, emotional stress that I was feeling up to the pandemic as well. But then it got to a place where I realized that this is not the pandemic. This is me. This is something going on inside of me. I wasn't really getting the answers that I needed from my doctor. I love her. She's great. I have a new doctor now. She was great and everything, but she never mentioned perimenopause to me. And when I would bring it up, she would tell me that I'm not there yet because I was not having hot flashes and I wasn't having like the typical menopause symptoms that, like the 3 typical symptoms like belly fat, trouble sleeping, and hot flashes, vaginal dryness. I wasn't having any of that. She didn't recognize it, and nor did I, as hormonal imbalance that was related to my change. So my symptoms were not the typical ones. And even though I had been optimizing for menopause for 10 years, I simply didn't recognize it because of everything that was happening in the world. And because, I didn't know that memory loss was going to be such a big thing for me, and also losing things and getting lost in the car, and then just having these really, really raw nerves where, it sounded like my children's voices sound like nails on a chalkboard to me. And I just didn't have that stress resilience that I typically have. Yeah. So that's how it went for me. And I was becoming so worried about my cognitive issues that I was embarrassed, ashamed, and also even afraid to talk about it because I didn't even want to put words to it because it was so scary for me. But I eventually found out that, it is related to my change and that I was in a state of really excess estrogen, like super, super high estrogen, which you don't really hear much about. Mm-hmm. But it's pretty common for women in perimenopause. So so that was like a turning point for me in that time period, and it kind of culminated in this odd event that it was like, this is like the snapshot of the peak of my Perislam, which was I came home from the pool one day with my children in the summertime, and there was a vulture sitting on my grill, my barbecue grill, and I got really freaked out about it. And being Italian, very superstitious, I kind of felt like somebody in the house was going to die. And I was like, who's going to die? Who's going down? And I got so exacerbated about the vulture. The vulture didn't leave. It stayed on the house, that I lost my keys. And I lost my car keys for 3 days. And I felt trapped and lost in my own house. And I was like totally freaking out. And part of me was wondering if I had actually made it up in my head. I know, it was bad. It was really bad. And I was just like reeling over this situation. And I was like, what's going on with me? And I had clients to deal with, like to drive to, and I didn't have a way to get out. I had no way to get anywhere because my car keys were gone. Luckily, one of my clients helped me out. Yeah, that was the height of everything. That was my major wake-up call that something is not right here.
The whole image of having a vulture waiting for you coming home, because I live in London in particular, is quite extraordinary. Did it leave in the end?
Well, it actually came to my place to die. That's who was going to die. It was the vulture. So I guess the vulture somehow felt safe in my yard. And the funny thing is I understood that's what was happening after I had tried to shoo it away for a couple of hours. And then I was looking at it. I was like, it just doesn't look right. So then I noticed it was out there on my fence, and I went out there several times over the night and I talked to it, and I said, I'm sorry, you're not feeling well. And the next morning, the vulture was dead in the yard. And, through this entire process, I realized that I was encountering my fear of death.
My focus shouldn't be the vulture at all. It's just this imagery in my head. But yes, there's a lot of metaphorical or even folklore story that could go along with this. And now that you say that. So then what happened next?
Oh, gosh, it's a crazy story. So one of my girlfriends came over to my house. I have wonderful female friends. And she was helping me look for the keys and like trying to like calm me down. And a client called and I told him one of my older clients, who's a wonderful help to me. I told him that what was going on. He's like, well, let me come and I'll bring you my car and you can borrow my car. So he's a 75-year-old man, very wise. And he brought the car over, and he was also coming to help me deal with the vulture's body. Now, I was also freaking out because the vulture was in my relationship sector of the Feng Shui Bagua in my yard, if you know what that means. But I was totally freaking out because I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to, I'm never going to find the love of my life, and I'm going to be alone, and all this stuff, all these fears, were rearing their ugly heads. He came over and he basically said he was going to deal with the vulture. And I said, okay, well, we're going to bury it, right? So I'll be out in a second. So he went out ahead of me, and he had these like nitrile gloves on. And he actually took the vulture in his hands, and I came around the side of the yard, and I'm watching this guy, and he is stomping on the vulture. And I'm like, what in the hell is he doing? Well, I had wondered if the vulture ate the keys, and so did he. So he was checking to make sure that the keys were not in the vulture's body. And then he took it and he threw it over the fence. And I was like, what are you doing? it's right in front of my yard now. Like, aren't we going to bury it? At that moment, it all clicked. He said, you know what? No, we're not going to bury it. This is a wonderful treat for all the other animals. At that moment, I realized, oh, this vulture is going to return to the soil the way that my body someday will. This is a part of nature. Death is a part of nature. And sure, I mean, I believe that my spirit lives on in another form. But the fact that our bodies decompose to fertilize new growth really kind of struck me and put me at ease and made me realize that this stage of life that I was going through was, a normal process. And also that our cultural baggage around this stage of life really has to do with fear of death.
How do you go from this transition to the fear of death?
Well, I think that aging and the signs of aging are a reminder of our mortality. We're transitioning from youth to reproduction and then post-reproduction. We live in this culture that tries to sanitize death and tries to sanitize and erase all signs of aging and deny them, actually. And there's a lot of cultural shame around that. I think the root of it really has to do with this fear that, we are impermanent. And then there's also a lot of other layers of shame and fear that have to do with aging, about relevance and loss of appeal and all kinds of other feelings that go along with it, because of the standards of beauty and standards of attention that we are taught to seek as women, especially. Yeah, that's what I came to.
So you were lifting before and obviously had a really healthy lifestyle and look after yourself, eat well. How did you then look after yourself from already a really good standing point, but feeling as though you were losing your memory, slightly losing your mind? What did you do to support yourself further?
Well, I guess I could rewind just a smidge and kind of back up to this idea that has been a long-term thing in my life, which is biohacking. And I didn't really call it biohacking until biohacking became a thing when I was about in my late 30s and 40s. But when I look back in retrospect, I see that that's what I was doing since probably about the age of 15, when I started to explore macrobiotics and studied the work of Michio Kushi. And so I have this very long-term preoccupation with longevity and health, even when I was young, and always tried to live as cleanly as possible and be informed about the choices that I was making. So when I entered my 40s and I was postpartum, I had my children at 37 and 39. I immediately started to optimize for menopause, following the work of Dr. Sarah Gottfried. She's a specialist who works with women and hormones. And I had great results. So I kind of adopted a lot of the things that she talks about in terms of working with eliminating things in our lifestyle that are hormonally disruptive. And then I started lifting in my early 40s, basically because I had Lyme disease and I was trying to elevate my core temperature. Many people who get Lyme disease have a low core temperature. So my idea was that I was going to lift weights, and I had been doing endurance sports my whole life, and capoeira, which is a Brazilian martial art. And so when I got to my 40s, I started lifting, and that was a whole nother journey with self-image that was pretty amazing. That inspired me to start coaching. But in the lifting, I really, I had been following anti-inflammatory kind of autoimmune protocol since I was 30. So I had a low inflammation diet already. But when I got to this stage, I realized I had to make further changes. And the changes that I made to reduce my estrogen surges were to really get back to that, make sure that I was shoring up that anti-inflammatory diet, eliminating all sugar, eliminating all alcohol, then eventually eliminating all caffeine. And I was really working on optimizing my liver function, because our liver is the primary organ that helps us to eliminate excess estrogen. And also, cleans our blood. It has so many amazing functions. The liver is just an incredible organ. So I really worked on taking care of my liver, and then also kind of like taking the training down a notch. Right before the pandemic, I had been training and competing and I actually got a couple of state records right before the pandemic in powerlifting. And I had been like excessively training my whole life, really. I didn't even know about downtime or recovery in my 30s at all. And then I started incorporating other things that were very helpful that I had read about, but really hadn't fully bought into until the pandemic. And that was incorporating morning sun into my routine. So exposure to morning sun. And also earthing, which is to place your feet on the ground so that you become attuned with the earth's electrical current. And that has been studied, 30 different studies around that, showing that it reduces body inflammation overall. So I did a lot of things like that very consistently. I got myself to a place where I'm completely symptom free and I'm not taking any hormones or anything. I do some supplements. I sleep like a baby. I weigh close to what I weighed when I was married. I have gotten my shape back to hourglass again. I feel more with it now than I've been in 10 years in terms of my mental clarity. Moods are really stable. The only symptom that I have is that I have basically a period that never goes away. It's really light, but I have like a week off and then it comes back again. So that's from the estrogen. So I still have excess estrogen, but I'm not symptomatic in other areas besides my frequent period. I just had my iron checked and, I'm now seeing a fantastic gynecologist. Oh my God. She's the head of the North American Menopause Society, Joanne Pinkerton. Oh yeah. I cherry picked her and I was so glad she took me on. I had ulterior motives in going there, aside from getting the best care possible. I wanted to form an alliance with them. I saw her last week and, here's the difference. Oh my gosh, please, if you are in menopause, seek out somebody from the North American Menopause Society to help you because it is like a whole different ball game. She spent like an hour and a half with me. She suggested that I go on bioidentical progesterone to regulate my period, basically. And I haven't decided whether I'm going to do that. I think I might opt for using topical wild yam cream for the next 3 months to see what kind of results I can get. Because I'm always for lifestyle, diet and lifestyle, supplements, bioidentical, and then synthetic is my preferred spectrum of treatment. She was great. She heard me and she was interested and she was curious. And I left there going from her to blood work for my hormonal panel, which most doctors are like, oh no, we're not going to test you. Yes, we're setting you up with blood work. We're going to check it all out. I went and I signed up for my mammogram. I signed up for a sonogram for my uterus and my ovaries to make sure that the bleeding was not related to something else. And then I got an appointment with endocrinology for my thyroid. And I also got an appointment for colonoscopy. And I was like, they're dealing with me as a whole woman. They recognize that my health is more than below the belt. I just felt so seen and heard and helped. It's uncommon that women feel this kind of support in this stage. So I highly recommend, if you are in the US specifically or in North America, to access this resource. You can go on their website and find a provider near you. And these are the few doctors, 1,400 only, who are actually qualified and certified to help women in menopause.
And that's only 1,400 doctors in the whole of North America. That seems astonishing.
Oh, yeah. It's crazy.
How did you get diagnosed with having excess estrogen in the first place?
It had been 4 visits to my gynecologist over the course of 2 years, in which I had pelvic sonograms and exams and whatever. No blood work though. And I went in there after that whole episode with the vulture and the lost keys. And I was still in a very fragile emotional state. I just went hysterical crying as soon as she walked in the door. And my tears were staining the paper gown. And, she finally said, okay, let's do some blood work. She tested me and then she called me back in 2 days. She's like, we need you to come in and do a pregnancy test. And I was like, I'm not pregnant. I have a copper IUD and there's no way. And she's like, well, your estrogen is so high that it looks like you're in your first trimester. It's supposed to be under 50 and it was over like 1500. But the thing is, it's really difficult to diagnose that because we change every day.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's hard to catch it. So my advice is to, if you do feel like you have estrogen dominance, or if you do feel like you have a hormonal imbalance, to get tested when you feel most symptomatic. And that happened to be in my luteal phase.
It seems to be that the lower side of estrogen is reported far more widely, certainly over here.
Oh, well, absolutely. And that's so much further in the menopause journey than most of us actually. Like, the low estrogen happens towards the end of perimenopause. Most of the symptoms associated with perimenopause, though, are actually associated with high estrogen. So I start first with food, and choosing an anti-inflammatory diet is the basis of all the change that I've been able to make. And it's the basis of the change that I make with my ladies too, in Periwink.
What are their overriding symptoms that they come to you with?
I would say across the board, it has more to do with their emotional state. So anxiety.
How does Periwink work? I've had a brief look at it on your website, but also speaking to Elizabeth, hearing about the fact that you all cook together on a Sunday.
Yeah.
I just think that is the most lovely thing to do.
Yeah. So, I mean, Periwink is different aspects. I'm now setting up individual courses to sell that, you know, can be kind of like a one-off experience that someone does individually. So I could just start out by telling you the mission of Periwink, which is really to help women transition through this stage of hormonal change and adopt long-term lifestyle habits that help them to look and feel their best right now, but then also optimize their long-term health outcomes. The way that I do this is by using lifestyle to reduce symptoms, because symptoms are common, but they are not normal. And they are not necessary. And they are usually, you know, a red flag for health problems down the line. It could be a little mini course that you take that helps you get off sugar, for instance, or it could be that you actually, you know, do a longer program that's like a 9-week reset on mindset and teaches you how to do food prep and why you want to make dietary choices. Or you can join the community. And the community is really where it's at, because, you know, these other courses are wonderful information. And if you're very motivated and you can make change on your own, they will work for you. But if you're someone who needs accountability and also needs to feel seen and heard, which a lot of women do in this phase, then the community is for you. It's an awesome group of women, very diverse, and some in Europe and some here on the East Coast. I do everything with them. So all they have to do is show up. We work out together 3 times a week. We do a walk and talk coaching call. These are half-an-hour sessions in which, you know, you come for individual help if you're dealing with any specific issues. It could be anything. It's a safe space. So whatever you want to talk about, if it's trouble in your sex life, if it's your mom died, if it's feeling unseen, whatever it is. And we support each other. Like, for instance, we have one of our ladies who's doing an art exhibition, and we're going to meet those of us who are local are going to meet there and see her work and go out to dinner. So it's very much a sisterhood. I provide technical help on one of the weekdays as well. So Monday through Friday is our 5 half-hour sessions, one each day. And then you can come to whatever you need. On Sundays, we do our food prep for the week. So I provide a shopping list and the menu for the week. And we make all of our food for the week in an hour and a half.
That's amazing. I need that.
So much fun too. And, you know, it's like you feel like you're in your kitchen with your girlfriends, you know, and we're all like in our pajamas and just, you know, wiping the sleep out of our eyes and drinking our morning beverages and, you know, like catching up. And I basically walk them through the entire thing. They don't have to know how to cook. All they have to do is have their stuff ready to go. And the food is amazing. It's so good. Major game changer. And also working out together is a game changer because we do it first thing in the morning, 6 a.m. It's a little painful at first just to wake up that early and move. But when you get used to it, you feel amazing and your day is so much more productive.
What inspired you to create Periwink to begin with?
My Perislam.
Right, of course.
Well, my Perislam. And then also I mentioned that fitness was my third career. Before the pandemic, I was working in a high-end fitness club here. I was very successful. I worked 6 days a week and I was full and I loved it. It was a great social atmosphere. It was really cool place to work. And then the pandemic happened and the gym shut. Many of my clients followed me. I'm now in my 8th season of training the ones who stuck with me outdoors. So we've been outside all this time. But I realized when I was at the gym that I was kind of on the glass ceiling. I was making as much money as I could make there and seeing as many people as I could see. I felt like I wanted to be able to reach more people. But I really resisted doing anything virtually for a long time, like even in the beginning of the pandemic. And then I finally came around to it and found it so rewarding and have made these incredible relationships with women internationally. Basically, when I reached this stage of womanhood and I realized how unsupported it was, I had this aha moment and I was like, oh my gosh, there's very little for us that's made for us. I started that way and I've been through many iterations of this and it continues to change as I understand the needs of the women. And I built this program around the women. As a result, have, changed it to suit them and continue to change it to suit them every single, week. It's always developing and changing with our change.
I think feeling as though you have somebody along there with you and who can hold your hand and talk to about anything, that is a key part to most parts of life, but certainly this one. What would be your pillar for healthy, positive, successful living through the change?
In my learning about this stage of womanhood, the community aspect and the coaching aspect that I do is such a strong piece of it because it's the mindset that really needs to adjust first, I think, before you really can buy into adopting lifestyle changes. And if we could put down the cultural Kool-Aid for a minute that we have been drinking, all of us, myself included, as progressive and intelligent and educated as I am, it's hard to put down that Kool-Aid that we've been drinking, which is in fact poison. Making a decision to recreate and reframe how we feel about aging and free ourselves from the cultural baggage and our own baggage that we've been carrying around that's limiting our potential. Go to my website and on social media in Facebook and Instagram on periwink.me.
I will put all the details in the show notes so everybody can access you easily. Really exciting to talk to you. Thank you, Dominique.
You're welcome. I'm so happy to do this with you, and I appreciate you reaching out.
You can find Dominique online at her website, perywink.me, and on Instagram at perywink.me. Sign up for our newsletter on realmenopausetalk.com and never miss an episode. And leave us a review on the podcast apps. Thank you for listening. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.